Hey there, parents. Thanks for listening to the No Problem Parenting Podcast. Are you ready to become the confident leader your kids crave you to be? Are you losing your crap on your kids, yelling, giving in, and exhausted at the end of every day? You are already a good parent, and I'm sure you've sought advice from friends or family. You've read books on your child's specific behavior problem. Maybe you've even signed them up to see the school counselor or an outpatient therapist. But despite your efforts to find the right person or thing that will help, your family is still struggling. You're tired of pretending everything's okay. Well, if your confidence is shot and you feel like you're failing your kids, but you also don't have a ton of time or money, register to become a No Problem Parent for just $50. It comes with an app so you can listen to the tips and tools just like you're listening to this podcast. You can start building confidence in your parenting immediately, whether your child is a toddler or all grown up and still living in your house. Don't make this parenting gig harder than it needs to be. Become a No Problem Parent today. Welcome to the No Problem Parenting Podcast. From toddler tantrums to teenage eye rolls, this podcast is your go-to for updated and old school tips and tools that are going to help you become the confident leader your kids crave you to be. Do you ever wish there was a specific manual that came with each one of your kids? I mean, what works for one often doesn't work for the other, right? And let's face it, we don't know what we don't know. And even if there was a manual, it probably wouldn't be able to keep up with all the changes in our world. Well, this podcast is the next best thing. I'm your host, Jackie Finneman, a 30-year counselor turned parenting coach, and I've got a lot to share, including hundreds of resources that you have access to right from your home and strategies that are going to boost your confidence and energize you. So whether you're knee-deep in diapers or navigating the tween years, or you're launching your child into adulthood, subscribe and share this podcast with your friends, teachers, and daycare providers. We're going to turn your parenting problems into no problem, one episode at a time. Real quick, No Problem parents, are you looking for a magical way to keep your kids entertained this summer? Meet the Tonybox, the squishy, snuggly, and totally tumble-proof audio player that kids can control all by themselves. With over 200 Tonys to choose from, there's a Tony for every part of the day, from morning songs to bedtime stories. And the best part? It's completely screen-free. Help your little ones discover the joy of imaginative play and learning with Tonys. Visit tonys.com to shop now and bundle and save. That's Tonys, TONIES.com. And check out episode 244 with Drew Vernon to learn more about Tonys and how Tonys is helping parents, teachers, and childcare providers. Welcome back, No Problem parents, to the No Problem Parenting Podcast, where we choose to deal with and overcome the emotional, the behavioral, the challenges within our home raising kids. And today I've brought on two authors of a new book called Wisest Learners. This is the parent edition for unlocking the secrets to your child's academic success. Welcome to the show, Dr. Ardium and Dr. Wallace.
Thanks for having us here today.
Oh, Jackie, thank you so much for this opportunity to share about our book.
I really want to jump right into the book because you guys have put so much research and education into this book for parents. So Dr. Wallace, share a little bit about how you and Dr. Ardium came together to write the book.
So I was a school administrator for about 14 years. And during the time that I was managing school, I saw the need for students to be able to learn how to be effective learners. Most of the time, schools would teach the what or even why. But most of the time, to teach about study skills or being able to be effective or optimal learners, that's kind of like glossed over. And I would understand because schools have a lot of pressure to cover a lot of ground when it comes to the curricula. So I decided to take up my PhD in educational psychology to go deep into this issue. And during the time when I was taking up my PhD, I encountered a lot of amazing research study. Like amazing, like, wow, this will be so good for my parents, my teachers, my students. The only thing is that they're not known to the public. They're like bottled up in this secret bottle.
Like where only the researchers know about it, right? I think Dr. Ardium and I were talking about that previously.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And because they're like so important, but they're like, people have to pay, right?
Yeah.
There's a paywall that would prevent the average Joe from being able to access those. And not only that, these research studies are quite technical as well. So you'll need to have some technical background to be able to fully understand. And I thought that, oh, this need to be brought out to the public. At around the same time, that's when I met Dr. Artium.
That's right. So basically, I'm a father of two, and my older son is now 10 years old. And a few years back, he started school. And then that's when, all the, difficulties to school adaptation to learning happened. And we struggled a lot. And I then approached Dr. Wallace, headmaster back then for 14 years, asking for his advices on what should I do? What would be the best strategies for me to deal with school issues and, how to help my son learn better and adapt better. And Dr. Wallace said, well, you're a cognitive neuroscientist. Why don't you approach it, scientifically? Why don't you, see what the literature says, what, the science says about this? And yeah, we started exploring research studies together, just exploring what's the best way to learn, best way to adapt to school and so on. And interestingly, as Dr. Wallace also mentioned, sometimes I would be saying, oh, check it out, this paper. And then I would send the title over, but Dr. Wallace wouldn't have access because, he's not at a university that has a subscription to these research studies. And I would then have to send PDFs over for him to read it. And we thought, wow, I mean, there is a big amount of knowledge that is not readily available to everyone. And now we could use our expertise in, educational psychology and cognitive neuroscience to basically translate this all research into a common language, and would be able to share with just everyone, all the parents who are out there struggling as I was, so that they could help their kids as well. So that's how the idea came to share what we've learned.
Well, that's amazing. And what's your son's name?
He's Alexander.
I think we all have Alexander to thank for this then, because it's because of him that brought the two of you together. So that is amazing. He's already served a great purpose on this world.
Yeah.
Alexander, kudos to you. There's so much in this book. I think we could do several episodes of the podcast just sharing everything. But of course, we want people to go out and grab the book. Who is the ideal reader for this book?
The ideal reader in this book is a parent who is very much concerned in their child's lives, particularly when it pertains to their academic success, wanting to optimize the potential of their children. So the kind of parent that would be so heavily involved will be very ideal. Someone who's like, okay, I'm concerned, I'm engaged, I want to make the most out of whatever is available. And this can be a very, very busy parent having triple jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of parent that we have.
In reading it, I see it as if you're a parent out there, if you have really high standards, academic standards for your kids, education is a priority and college education, and that's really important to you as a parent. This book, I think, helps you kind of get that in check while still guiding your child, that intrinsic learning, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, but really be interested in it rather than you feeling like the parent who always needs to harp on your child to do well and to succeed. You guys are really laying out some great ideas here that are going to help you have high standards for your kid while at the same time supporting your child.
That's true. That's a very good point. And then we do make a lot of emphasis on academic success or educational attainment, but one of the qualities of wisest learner that we describe is a lifelong learner. So not someone who is going to like study well in school and then in college and that's it. But this is someone who is able to learn lifelong, who has the skills, mindset, beliefs, everything set to learn, intuitively, to learn as a second nature. And we're speaking with Dr. Wallace that, my mom, for instance, she used to work in the same bank for almost all her life. Like it was one job she did all her life. And then one position, just did it well, hard work, but the same thing again and again and again. But nowadays, development of the artificial intelligence, changing jobs, changing industries. One is forced to learn anew almost every few years. A lot of my friends, like in IT, in media, in many other fields, it's like a mandatory thing to change a job every 3 years. And if you stay in one position for over 3 years, sometimes your resume will not even be looked at. You're staying there for too long. You need to develop, you need to progress constantly. So this is sort of the environment we would like to prepare kids for. So an environment where people have to learn constantly. And that's one of the definitions of Wisest Learners.
Love that. Absolutely love that. I'm glad you point that out too, because it's not just about academic learning.
Right.
And I love that you say it's like the lifelong, just that interest and passion for always being curious and always wanting to ask why or to learn more, which the parents listening today who have a child right now that's always saying, why? I know that gets annoying, but that is a signal that kiddo is a lifelong learner already, just naturally. So I think that's awesome. Well, as we begin here, I think one of the key things that you set the stage for this book is helping parents to learn what their role is in their child's learning process. And so you have developed a 3-step sort of model called the Parental Engagement Cycle. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Dr. Wallace?
Jackie, one of the critical aspects of the book is that if we were to, let's say, differentiate it from other books, is our book is holistic. So what it means is that it's like if I were to use an analogy, it's like instead of just having a single vitamin, like vitamin A is important, vitamin B is important. So you can read, let's say, other books and you'll have like a vitamin A or vitamin B or a vitamin C or a vitamin D. But how we came up with it is that we have a multivitamin because every single thing is every vitamin is so important, every supplement, these are important. And we put it together in such a way that we recognize the value of each one. And at the same time, we understand they're interconnected. Now, because they're so invaluable that we recognize also that it's important for parents not just to learn what are good concepts, good principles, good strategies, but how do they make use of these so that they'll be able to impact their children. That's because knowing what they are it will not be enough. Parents will need to know, okay, what do I do next, right? Okay, I know that this is a good strategy, this is a good concept, but that's me. I could have even mastered it, but how do I then translate that to my kids, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we came up with Parental Engagement Cycle. Because through the Parental Engagement Cycle or the PEC, parents will then be able to make that influence or impact on their children.
I love it. It's like flexing your pec, your PEC, your pecs.
Yeah.
And Dr. Ardium, you talk about the 3 spokes. Just give us an overview of them really quick. Modeling, elucidation, and feedback.
That is correct. So basically, the parental engagement cycle is the part of the book that speaks about the parental engagement. So what depends on the parents. And we also have a section of the book that basically concentrates on what is expected from the students, what they need to do, what's kind of their job and how to help them do that. So when speaking about the parental role, we have these 3 spokes, and these are basically exactly modeling, elucidation, and feedback. And when we say modeling, we mean that parents play a huge role in kids' education and in how they, who they are, basically. So if we look back into history, I mean, it's basically in every family, but it's especially pronounced in, famous people. Let's say Albert Einstein, right? World famous physician, right? But his father, Hermann Einstein, was an engineer, and he kind of instilled this love for science in his son. He kind of showed him how magnetism work, how compasses work. And in a lot of ways, thanks to him, Albert Einstein was who he was. Or let's say we take Marie Curie Skłodowska, the famous researcher who worked on radioactivity, right? Her parents were also teachers, and her father was teaching mathematics and physics, right? And we can move on and on and on. So parents do play a big role in students' lives, and therefore we say modeling is one big aspect of of the parental role as parents. And yeah, all the strategies, all the, philosophies that we speak about in the book, they have to be mastered by parents, right? That's their role to show on their example how things are, how they should be.
That is really, you're sparking a thought in my mind when you say that. It's like modeling for your kids. You can be a physician and raise an engineer. You can be a farmer and raise a physician. You could be a contractor or a construction worker and raise an architect. I mean, it's that idea that you're keeping your kids curious, showing them how to do things, modeling that for them and helping them gain some interest or piquing their curiosity. Talk about elucidation a little bit.
Right. So the next point is elucidation is an art of making things clear. So it's an ability to take a complex matter and to decompose it into its constituents. Speaking about bears, for instance, explaining a child what are the bears, where they live, and if they're dangerous for humans or not, and why, and at what time of the year, and taking the time to speak with their children and to explain complicated matters. So this is, on the one thing, it's better for learning. Of course, the better they kind of understand the whatever concepts you speak about, the better they learn. But later on, they'll be using the same elucidation principles, trying to explain things to themselves, right? So they learn, it's a part of modeling again. So they model the way parents can elucidate complex matters to, learn themselves better. So that's the elucidation part.
And just real quick, Dr. Wallace, were you going to say something before? I think I sparked a thought from you as well.
Oh, you sparked a thought from your spark thought. Because
we could do this all day.
Yeah, because when I was taking my PhD, my professor asked me, "So Wallace, what's the background of your parents?" Because from her experience, most who would take their PhDs have parents who are also into education. So I shared with her that my father, both are business people, entrepreneurs, and involved in micro enterprises. But what's interesting, probably, and I say it with pride, is that my father actually finished first grade and learned to read on his own, and my mother finished second year high school. But what I remembered was growing up, every summer, my mom would always excite me and my siblings with summer activities. Like, oh, what are we going to learn this summer? So we would do all sorts of things. Some that I didn't enjoy as much, but I realized that, oh, okay, I'm not really cut out to be a professional musician or a professional dancer. That's not going to be my career, or it's not going to be a hobby for me. But I learned that, oh, I I grew to love other aspects. Like I got involved in public speaking, communication, writing. So these are some of the things that I enjoyed. Some sports. I got into bowling, swimming. So it was the summer exposure and my especially my mother's love for learning that rub off on us. So when you shared about having let's say construction workers suddenly inspiring their kids to do something like a different kind of career, that's definitely a huge part of parents impacting their children when due to modeling.
Yeah, it's so good. And I just think of so many people who learn differently and different than the, structured school setting where maybe their grades won't reflect their learning ability because the style of teaching doesn't fit them, doesn't suit them. Mm-hmm. They still make it through most of the time they'll make it through, they'll graduate, but then man, do they soar when they're outside of the typical classroom structure and they're able to explore and learn and focus on the things that they're curious about or have interest in. So yeah, your book covers all of this stuff, you guys. Let's quickly get through the third leg of the PEC, of the parental engagement cycle, and that is feedback. So Ardium, can you talk a little bit about that one?
Right. So feedback is a big part of, a child's upbringing, because parents have to provide feedback about their behavior, about their learning, about their behavior with parents, with other kids, with their siblings. It's a lot of feedback. And given that it's a very important aspect of their upbringing, right? And we dedicate the third leg of the parental engagement cycle to feedback. And here, probably it's important to say about the power of words.
I was just going to ask you to say that, because that flows so nicely into the importance of words and the power of words and how we say what we say to our kids, right?
Exactly. When we speak in the context of feedback, let's say, right? So we write that feedback should be, for instance, should be specific and descriptive. For instance, if your child did something well, instead of saying just good job, one should try be more specific, like what exactly was well. For instance, like, I noticed you shared your toys with your friends. You're very kind of you. So you're speaking more specific, addressing that particular trait that you find positive, right? So you're praising that, particularly something that you cannot argue against, right? Something that is obvious. That's a fact.
Yes, it's exactly step 3 of my No Problem Parenting, where I teach the difference between unconditional praise and conditional praise. Conditional meaning factual. It's exactly what you guys are promoting and talking about. And I have the research behind, right? The importance of that. I have the research in my experiences in the 30 years of seeing what has worked and what hasn't. It actually does make a difference when you can, instead of just saying good job, or you're nice, or you have friends, or, you're good at something or whatever, you first put some conditional factual evidence there that they can cling on to and know from the inside out that you're right and that it's true. So
maybe a different, aspect of feedback is to be empathic and supportive still, showing empathy towards kids' feelings. And you could say something like, I see you're frustrated. It's okay to take a break and try again. Just being supportive and using kind words. It's also sometimes, or like, I'd say, unfortunately, too frequently, one should use some constructive criticism, but a criticism should be constructive, right? And one needs to focus on the behavior of a child, not on, their personality. For instance, it's better to say not like, you're bad at this, you're bad at writing, or you're bad at writing essays or taking tests. You could say, next time, try to organize your thoughts before you start writing, right? So you see that there is maybe the essay was not as structured. So you offer a kind way out, like you offer an advice, but still pointing out that something should have been improved or should be improved next time. So it's a bit more constructive.
I was very much inspired by Dr. Adam Grant's research on this with regard to the use of nouns and verbs. So we like to share about the importance of being able to properly use nouns and even adjectives and verbs in the way we communicate with our children. If there's one thing that during this podcast that I would really want parents to be aware of, it's like our words carry a lot of weight, way more than we can appreciate. Every child is a work in progress in the same way that we are. When it comes to areas for improvement, we should definitely veer away from using nouns, because we don't want them to think that they're like that for the rest of their lives. And for us as parents, let's recognize that our children are works in progress. They will make mistakes. Yeah. But they're not stuck in this particular, whatever negative state that you think they are in right now.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so true. So let's move on then next. One of the other things I'm really curious about in your book, you help parents learn how to help their kids feel motivated from the inside out.
That is correct. So these are basically 2 primary sources of motivation. So the intrinsic motivation that comes from the inside, So basically, when you like the subject matter, when you, for instance, if you are doing math, you like numbers, you like, working with numbers, and you enjoy it for the sake of doing math, not for the grades, not for the praises from teachers or classmates or parents. And we are the extrinsic type of motivation, basically the external. That is when you are doing things because, you get something for this. Like you get extra playtime, or the parents will praise you. Yeah. Or the teacher will kind of say, yeah, that's a good student. Unfortunately, there are times when some subjects are just not interesting for kids. Like you cannot be interested in just everything, right? So there would be situations when you have to learn physics or chemistry or English literature, and you're just not interested in this. So how can we deal with that? So research show that you cannot really force a child to love doing something, right? But we could create conditions that are making this more likely that they will eventually like just about anything, right? So they would find something interesting, something valuable in every subject that they're trying to learn. And here, one of the first things that, come as a help would be the utility value. So if kids know that whatever they're learning is somehow connected to real life, connected to their future, that's something that they are not just, theoretically learning in school, but can really implement or can see in real life, that would be really helpful. And some of the things that can help intrinsic motivation happen like later in time, for instance, connecting to real life examples. But there are some things that can happen like that happen before even kids start, officially learning in school. That would be, for instance, supporting their curiosity, right? Kids are curious little individuals. And oftentimes parents would be too busy, going back to elucidation, the PEC, right, part. And they would not be willing to invest a lot of time and effort supporting this curiosity. They would not be willing to speak about things, while this curiosity is about intrinsic motivation, right? So kids are interested in the world around them. So if they see that parents put their attention and effort in supporting their curiosity and supporting different aspects of their lives, that could help them later on be interested in various activities, in various subjects, and find something interesting in any subject. Oftentimes, kids get interested in different subjects once they get a hand of it. So it could be challenging at first. And let's say you're learning some formulas in the chemistry, and then if you're not really intrinsically motivating, that could be really challenging at first while you're grasping the basic concepts. But once you make some progress, once you get good grade, or you just understand how things work and you can link it to real life, at some point you start liking it because you get a positive reinforcement from learning, right? So parents would need to be super supportive at this, challenging stage of learning where things are really difficult. And hopefully with time, the intrinsic motivation would kick in.
Yeah, I love that. And being able to guide your child through that, validating and empathizing with, I know this is hard. This is something new that you are learning. It's taxing your brain. It's hard work. It's taking more energy and effort. And you are a person that strives through or works hard.
Now, I'd like Artem to share his conversation with his son because it's such a beautiful conversation. So.
In school, we were at some point preparing our son to take the tests, right? So official tests start about in the 3rd grade in Germany. Reading the literature, working on that book. And we have a chapter on test anxiety. There are things in test anxiety that you can prepare your kids in advance. And there are ones that you kind of need to help them while they're taking the test. So while they're in the stage of, test taking. And preparing for the test anxiety, we're trying to, tell our son explicitly that the test grades that he gets do not define our love, for him. They're not like our relationship, our positive relationship and our love and, our care does not depend on his grades. So that he would not feel worried that, getting a bad grade, for instance, can somehow influence our relationships. And I think it works. My son is super confident and really relaxed. I think sometimes I worry more than he does.
Mm-hmm. And that comes with being a parent.
exactly in a good way, right? I think it also helps him to be intrinsically motivated to take the test, to learn, and not to worry about any external factors like, relationship with the parents. So I think that is super important, goes back to, the role of a parent and maybe goes back to modeling. So I think it's all interconnected, or as we call it, holistic.
That is super good. Well, parents listening today, the book is called Wisest Learners. It's the parent edition. It helps students with time management. There's a topic about anxiety management, how to succeed throughout their school career, all the way through college. But it also really, parents, focuses on the importance of your parent attitude towards school and learning and how that's going to affect your kiddos' academic progress. So you guys say that modeling a good attitude and hunger for learning is going to go a long way to support your kiddos' learning habits. So I'm excited to send people over to your website. You can find Dr. Ardium and Dr. Wallace, more information on each of you and the book at wisestlearners.com, and follow them on social media at Wisest Learners.
Just remember, parents, that parenting is a journey, and it's a journey of highs and lows. There will be times that we as parents will make mistakes, and we will feel sorry for what we did or wish we did, and that's part of the process. It's okay. We keep on doing our best. We keep on learning, but we never give up. So I'd like to encourage parents that during these highs and lows, as long as we have this attitude of learning, we'll continue to be better. And that in the long run, down the road, our children will appreciate and understand the things that we have done and are doing for them.
Parenting is a difficult, a complex process. It's a long journey. And as Dr. Wallace said, it's filled with ups and downs. But there are many resources that can help us along the way. And we took our time to, gather what we thought was important in our book. I hope our book would be helpful to all the parents out there raising wisest learners.
All right, that's it for today's episode of the No Problem Parenting Podcast. Hey, thanks guys for tuning in. If you found value in today's episode, click the subscribe button and share it with other parents who might need a little boost. Stay connected on our socials by following @NoProblemParents for more parenting tips, and get your free download of the 60 ways to respond to your kids without losing your cool. Go to noproblemparents.com. Until next time, remember, your confidence comes from embracing both successes and setbacks. So take a deep breath, embrace the chaos, and remember, you got this.